Derek Bieri's journey from ViceGrip Garage was never just about reviving old cars. It was about grit, survival, and determination. He built his empire from the ground up, turning piles of rust into symbols of hope. But behind the camera, life wasn't nearly as polished. It threw punches harder than any seized-up engine he'd ever faced. Derek had to make brutal choices, sacrificing stability, security, and comfort to chase a dream most people would call downright crazy. Yet, that risk was the turning point. What happened next didn't just change his career. It almost changed his entire life, and not in the way anyone expected. From a small-town mechanic to a YouTube sensation, Derek became the gearhead who quietly took over the internet. Born on May 16, 1984, in Mullet, North Dakota, Derek grew up on a humble family farm where he learned early that nothing came easy. If something broke, you fixed it. There were no quick runs to the store for replacements. His father and grandfather could make almost anything run again using nothing but a few tools, elbow grease, and good old-fashioned ingenuity. That resourceful mindset stuck with Derek for life. For him, working with his hands wasn't just about repairing machines. It was about solving problems, making things last, and understanding how the world worked without wasting a thing. One day, while digging through a pile of rusted metal and forgotten memories, he stumbled upon something that would unknowingly change his entire path. By his teenage years, Derek had a natural gift for mechanics. Welding, fabricating, and restoring beat-up vehicles came to him effortlessly. He once told his audience, "I've got some really exciting news, fellas." Today, we're adding on to ViceGrip Garage. We're doubling the size of this pole barn, and I'm bringing you guys along for the ride. Derek didn't learn from textbooks or classrooms. His education came from the real world. Trial, error, and long nights spent tinkering in his garage. Every engine that refused to start was a puzzle waiting to be solved. Every rusted-out car was a challenge begging for resurrection. Over the years, he worked in auto shops, managed businesses, and sharpened his mechanical intuition. He didn't rely on fancy degrees or certificates. He relied on hard-earned experience. While his peers chased college degrees, Derek was knee-deep in carburetors and grease-stained rags. His reputation grew quickly for tackling car projects that others had written off as impossible. Eventually, that passion led him to step into a completely different world, corporate life. For a long while, he traded wrenches for neckties, working a stable 9-to-5 filled with meetings and deadlines. It paid well, but it wasn't fulfilling. Even after long workdays, he'd sneak into his garage late at night, chasing the same feeling he had as a kid on the farm, bringing lifeless machines back to life. By 2007, he decided to merge that passion with a new idea, the internet. Inspired by other car enthusiasts online, he began filming his own restoration projects. The early videos were far from perfect, shaky cameras, poor lighting, and raw edits, but they were authentic. "I'm gonna put some ice cube juice in it, get this thing fired back up, and hopefully it stays cool," he'd joke in his videos. That honesty, mixed with humor and authenticity, quickly attracted attention. His breakthrough came when he restored a 1969 Camaro Z28, a project that captured the hearts of car lovers everywhere. Derek wasn't chasing perfection. He was chasing purpose. His ViceGrip Garage channel became a haven for real car lovers, people tired of overproduced content. He focused on the underdogs of the automotive world, rusted-out, forgotten vehicles that others had given up on. Slowly but surely, the channel grew, turning Derek into one of YouTube's most respected car builders. Balancing that success with his day job became nearly impossible. Eventually, he had to make the toughest decision of his life: stay safe in corporate America or take a leap of faith and bet everything on his passion. Derek chose the garage. From that moment on, his channel exploded. Subscribers multiplied, projects grew bigger, and his online community became more loyal than ever. Derek didn't just create a channel. He built a movement dedicated to saving old cars and proving that nothing is too far gone. His success opened doors to new opportunities. By 2021, he made another big leap, packing up his family and moving from Minnesota to Tennessee. It wasn't just about warmer weather. Tennessee offered more freedom, more family time, and endless room to build and create. No more long commutes or bitter winters, just Derek, his tools, and his love for cars. His new location also brought him closer to the world of racing, something he'd always been passionate about. That same year, he participated in the Midwest Drags event, driving a lowered ice cream truck for fun. Later, he joined Rocky Mountain Race Week with his beastly Mustang El Toro, running 8-second passes on the drag strip. It wasn't just about competition, it was about the thrill, the challenge, and the connection between man and machine. That fire for racing burned as deeply as his passion for restoration. Derek's growing fame caught the attention of Motor Trend, and in 2022, he landed his own show, Roadworthy Rescues. The premise was simple yet thrilling. Find abandoned, forgotten vehicles and bring them back to life under tight deadlines. The debut episode featured a 1967 Mustang that hadn't moved in nearly 3 decades. Derek's authenticity, problem-solving, and genuine love for cars made the show an instant hit. Of course, with success came rumors. Some fans speculated about a lawsuit involving ViceGrip Garage after Derek jokingly nicknamed a 1965 Chevy C10 the lawsuit in a video. The misunderstanding spread, but it was pure humor. No legal drama ever existed. However, one real-life issue did strike close to home when a valuable carburetor was stolen from his farm. The Bieri family offered a $55,000 reward for its return. The theft was a setback, but the overwhelming support from fans proved something special. ViceGrip Garage wasn't just entertainment. It was a community built on trust and shared passion. Behind the scenes, Derek's wife Jessica keeps everything running smoothly, managing the business side while raising their 3 sons. The Bieri family has made ViceGrip Garage a true family operation. Their youngest son, Bentley, has even started his own channel, Little Grip Garage, where he repairs go-karts and dirt bikes, proudly following in his dad's footsteps. And then came one of Derek's toughest challenges yet, a 1979 Fox Body Mustang buried under decades of dust in a Kentucky barn. The catch? He had less than 24 hours to get it running before a snowstorm hit. The car hadn't moved since 2002, and no one knew if it even had life left in it. But for Derek, this was just another test of heart, skill, and determination. Standing in the freezing cold, surrounded by snow and steel, he proved once again why millions around the world root for him. Because to Derek Bieri, every car deserves a second chance, and every dream is worth the risk. That whole situation felt suspicious, honestly. It was time to figure out exactly what was missing, what was broken, and how to come up with a proper game plan. The morning temperature sat at a freezing 8 degrees, which meant everything outside was solid ice, just lovely. The Mustang itself had that first-generation quad headlight look, a design that gave it a distinctive edge. It was a hatchback, not a notchback, and while some car enthusiasts swore by the latter for its tough, boxy stance, it didn't make much difference here. Ford made a ton of these models, around 379,000 in total, but the V8 version was the rare gem, with only about 47,000 to 50,000 ever built. So the next step was to check the vehicle identification number and take a good look under the hood to see if anyone had pieced it together over the years. A quick walk around the car revealed a few things right away. The rear quarter panel looked decent, showing only small rust bubbles, nothing too concerning. No major rust eating away at the structure, which was a miracle for a car of this age. The paint, however, told another story, layer after layer of mismatched color. The tail lights were miraculously still there, and the rear defrost system was intact but, of course, cracked. The tires were completely shot, dry-rotted beyond any hope of saving them, but luckily he had already sent replacements ahead. The passenger side seemed solid, except for one odd dent that looked like someone had backed into a concrete parking curb sideways. This was the first time he'd actually laid eyes on the car, and to his surprise, the body seemed fairly straight. Aside from that one nasty dent, there wasn't much rust. The door handles were useless, the wipers existed in name only, and the roof had clearly taken a beating, hail damage everywhere with at least a dozen deep dents. The windshield, on the other hand, was solid. The glass uncracked. still carrying an Ohio State Patrol sticker from 1982. That was probably the last time this car had been in Ohio before being passed around as a failed project. Inside, the Mustang told another story. The interior wasn't exactly red. It was a strange pinkish maroon shade, almost salmon, paired with wood grain accents. A bold choice, to say the least. The smell hit immediately, a strange mix of old jewelry box, used motor oil, and regret. Mice had clearly made themselves at home, but surprisingly, the seats were still in decent shape, and the dashboard was nearly perfect. The odometer showed 20,000 miles, but realistically it was probably closer to 120,000. The passenger side interior wasn't bad either, though the headliner sagged like it was ready to drop at the first hint of heat. As for the back seats, well, no one ever really sat back there in a Mustang anyway. The floor was filthy but structurally solid. He even found the old Ohio license plates, last registered in 2002, along with some receipts, random Mustang memorabilia, and a faded factory build sheet tucked away like a trophy. Clearly, someone once cared deeply about this car. A quick VIN check confirmed the good news. The fifth digit was an F, meaning it rolled off the factory line as a true V8. That was a small victory. Under the hood, the car revealed more surprises. The original 302 factory setup was still there, though an aftermarket intake had been slapped on. The coil looked relatively new, but the wiring was a tangled mess, typical of old project cars. The distributor was corroded, the fuel lines brittle, and the ignition system was completely dead. Classic Ford problem, it never sparked when needed. Naturally, the battery was long gone, so he hooked up a fresh one and turned the key. To his relief, the motor cranked over. That meant the engine wasn't seized, one less nightmare to deal with, but that stubborn distributor refused to move. Years of rust and grime had welded it in place. Out came the torch, the penetrating oil, and a pry bar. This was either going to take all day or pop free in seconds. There was no middle ground. He heated it, soaked it, and pried at it relentlessly until, with a sharp crack, it finally gave way. Freedom. A new distributor went in, along with a fresh coil, and the old ignition box was tossed out in favor of a Pertronix flamethrower setup. It simplified everything. Time wasn't on his side. A snowstorm was closing in fast, and if this Mustang didn't start by morning, he'd be stranded in a blizzard with a dead car. The ignition was fixed, but now the fuel system needed attention. The old fuel lines were brittle as candy canes left in the sun. The sending unit was garbage, the fuel pump completely missing. He dropped the tank, scraping away decades of varnish and filth. It smelled like rotten gasoline and disappointment. A new pump, filter, and lines went in, and he crossed his fingers for luck. Back under the hood, the problems kept piling up. The belts were cracked, hoses leaking, and the thermostat jammed shut. He replaced what he could, popped open the thermostat housing, and found rust everywhere. After cleaning and refilling the system with fresh coolant, he just hoped the radiator would hold pressure. It hadn't seen heat in over 20 years. The transmission linkage was another mess, stuck between gears and coated in grime. After crawling under the car, he managed to free it up, lube everything, and get it sliding smoothly again. The brakes were next, a total disaster. The master cylinder was bone dry, the rear drums were seized tight, and the front calipers were barely functioning. He cracked open the bleeders, replaced the lines, and prayed for pressure. A new battery went in, and after some tinkering, the headlights flickered on. Brake lights didn't. Turn signals did. Corrosion was everywhere, and he chased down bad grounds until the dash lights glowed for the first time in decades. Getting it to crank was one thing. Making it run was the real battle. The Mustang's long journey through time had left it scarred by neglect and half-finished promises from one owner to the next. Someone once claimed the transmission had been rebuilt, but there were no receipts, just rumors and wishful thinking. Unsurprisingly, it barely wanted to shift. Still, he managed to get it moving, even if only barely, and set his sights on reaching Bangor that night. Out in the cold countryside, surrounded by kind folks who'd offer you their last piece of pie. He kept wrenching away, heating, prying, and cursing in rhythm. The engine spun counterclockwise, meaning the cam turned one way and the distributor the other. Simple enough, but removing it was another story altogether. After some stubborn wrestling, he got it out and examined the wear pattern, smooth and even, no missing teeth or signs of a botched job. At least Ford had done something right with its hex drive shaft setup. He cleaned the hold-down pad carefully. It acted as the ground for the ignition system, and a bad ground meant nothing would run. After scraping away corrosion, he aligned the new unit, applying a bit of lube, maybe too much, and dropped it in with the rotor roughly at the 1 o'clock mark. Close enough for now. Tightened it down, set the timing by feel, and moved on to the spark plugs. They were fouled beyond saving, likely from sitting too long or running rich. He swapped in a cheap set of replacements, but of course the plug wires in the kit were the wrong type. Because why would anything go smoothly? That meant another parts run, and by the time he'd make it back, darkness would have settled in. Progress for now was officially done for the day. The battle with the old Mustang wasn't over, but at least for the first time in decades, it was showing signs of life. By the time darkness began to blanket the frozen landscape, the Mustang sat half awake in the dim light of the shop. The tools lay scattered around, steam rising from a mug of forgotten coffee. Derek wiped the grime from his hands and looked at the car, part frustration, part fascination. It was a mess, sure, but it had potential. Every dent, every cracked hose, every stubborn bolt told the story of years gone by, of owners who tried and gave up, of winters survived in barns, and summers spent baking under the sun. The plan for the next morning was clear: fire this thing up or freeze trying. He had done enough groundwork, fuel system rebuilt, ignition renewed, fluids replaced. All that was left was to see if the engine still had a heartbeat. Morning came cold and unforgiving. Frost clung to every inch of metal. Derek turned the key once more. The engine cranked, slow, hesitant, and then nothing, a cough, a sputter, but no fire. He exhaled, adjusted the timing by feel, and tried again. This time a deep rumble shook the air. The old 302 roared to life in a cloud of smoke and dust, like a dragon waking from a decades-long slumber. It wasn't perfect, not even close. The idle was rough. Exhaust fumes burned the eyes, and belts squealed under tension, but it was alive, and that was enough for now. He let it run, listening closely for knocks, rattles, or warning signs. The oil pressure gauge twitched, then steadied. Coolant began to circulate, steam curling out from the tailpipes. After all the hours of frustration, the sound of that V8 running was pure relief. Next came the small details that made the difference between a lifeless hunk of metal and a working car. He bled the brakes until the pedal finally firmed up, replaced a few last-minute hoses, and cleaned the terminals to keep the lights steady. The wiring still had its quirks, occasional flickers, random shorts, but at least it wasn't trying to burn itself to the ground anymore. The heater even worked halfway decently, a small miracle in the biting cold. Then came the moment of truth. Would it move under its own power? Derek dropped it into gear. The car jerked, grumbled, then slowly rolled forward, leaving deep tracks in the snow. The transmission shifted reluctantly, but it shifted. The steering felt tight, brakes grabbed unevenly, yet somehow everything held together. For the first time in decades, this Mustang was driving again. Out on the quiet country road, snowflakes drifted down in soft waves, and the car's headlights cut through the gray. Every noise, every rattle was a reminder of the work still ahead. But Derek wasn't chasing perfection tonight. He was chasing proof that the car could be saved. The old Ohio plates in the back seat rattled with every bump, almost like they were applauding the resurrection. As he rolled to a stop, steam rising from the hood and exhaust puffing in the cold air, Derek couldn't help but smile. The Mustang was far from finished. Its rust scars, dented roof, and cracked paint were proof of that. But it had spirit. For a car that had been written off by time and neglect, it had just proven it wasn't ready for the junkyard yet. He turned off the engine, letting the silence settle around him. In that stillness, surrounded by the hum of cooling metal and the faint smell of fuel, he realized something simple yet profound. Sometimes, bringing something old back to life isn't about perfection or polish. It's about persistence, patience, and the belief that even after years of being forgotten, a spark of life can still be found under layers of rust and dust. Tomorrow, there would be more work, fine-tuning the timing, chasing electrical ghosts, replacing the wrong plug wires, and adjusting the carburetor. But for tonight, under the soft fall of snow, that roaring V8 was enough proof that the Mustang had found its heartbeat again. It was no longer just a relic of the past. It was a survivor, reborn one frozen morning at a time.